It was a nice relaxing night and I was driving in my car, taking on a long journey back home. I had gone to one of my friend's place to help him out as he had recently moved into his new home, and he had asked if I could help him bring in his furniture and stuff inside of there, to which I had obviously accepted his request. It took around a few days doing this, and I would just sleep on the floor in his living room when staying there. When it was finally time for me to go back home, it was like 9 p.m. and my friend was insisting that I should stay for another day, but I just decided I would take on this night drive, even though it would take like almost 2 hours to make it back home. I didn't want to overstay, especially since he had just moved in not too long ago. It would be better if he rested up and adjusted to his new home without anyone disturbing, if you might understand. He gave me some food to take with me on the journey, and I left his home, getting inside of my car right after. It wasn't too much of an issue for me to be going back when it was dark. I was actually more concerned if I would start to feel tired on the way, which I didn't want happening since it isn't the most comfortable approach sleeping inside of a car in the middle of nowhere during the nighttime. That just gives an anxious feeling when even thinking about it. I started driving and was still within his neighborhood. There wasn't much cars around and I was mostly hoping there wouldn't be much traffic when exiting his neighborhood area right before going onto the highway. I was at a red light and sat there waiting for the light to go green. I had to use a GPS to be able to know where I was going, since it was of course my first time going from his new home back to my place. That was also another concern I had in mind, which was getting lost on the way or possibly taking the wrong route. However, I tried my best to focus on my driving to avoid these negative thoughts coming to my mind. I realized this traffic light was taking a long time to turn green and I was getting quite impatient. Maybe the traffic light system around that area was different and had a longer duration before changing or something. It was strange, since it took way too long in my opinion. I remained in my position for a while, and I was looking around to see if any other drivers saw anything wrong going on. Some of the cars were honking their horns, and this was going on for like a minute or two, until some guy on a motorcycle drove right next to my driver's side window and knocked on it. I got startled when hearing this, and seeing the stranger coming up to my window, I rolled it down a little, and that was when I heard him getting angry at me for some reason. He was saying that I had nearly crashed into him before and that he wanted compensation, otherwise he would call the police on me. I was really confused when hearing this. I was sure I didn't try to intentionally collide into anyone on a motorcycle, let alone remembering any motorcycle going in front of me or near me. I responded by telling him that he might have gotten the wrong car, but he continued getting more aggressive and demanding for me to pay him. It felt like some sort of scam was going on and I didn't want to be part of it any more longer. I was still waiting for this red light to go green and was thinking that it might not be functioning properly. The guy on the motorcycle was still there and I rolled my window back up since I didn't feel safe with there being an opening in my car when he was right there. After waiting for another minute or so, it finally turned to a green light and I started driving again. It looked like the guy on the motorcycle was following me and I could see him trying to get close to my car. I was on the highway now, so I could speed up a lot more than before within the speed limit. However, he seemed to be a lot more faster than me since he was on a motorcycle, of course. I tried my best to ignore him and focus on driving. I wasn't trying to risk an accident happening because I was too distracted by this person following me. This continued on until I took a sudden right turn, exiting the highway without indicating. I figured this would be the best way for me to get away from this person. It was risky because if someone was behind me, they could have collided into me, but I think it was one of the only ways to try losing him without him potentially following me all the way back home. It sounds a little far-fetched, but some people might be like that if they want to gain something from it. I didn't see the guy anymore and I took a different route anyway. I made it back home safely that night and was relieved that I could get away from any further situation beyond that. Seriously though, was this guy trying to scam me or scare me by following me? I'm not sure, but just be aware of certain people like this. It's quite disturbing. I was driving along a very quiet road that didn't have much cars passing by. This area had quite a bad reputation with carjacking and accidents happening quite often apparently, to which I didn't really have much concern about. The road seemed to be in decent condition and I didn't see anyone who might be dangerous. It was probably my ignorant thinking, but I just dismissed it without caring too much. This was during the daytime, by the way, so I could see very clearly ahead of me, though it was a road that had a lot of vegetation and stuff surrounding the area. So to my right and left side, it was filled with a lot of trees and bushes that would make it hard to see on those parts. It wasn't an issue, I would say, until a deer or some animal runs out onto the road and causes an accident. Some stuff to consider, I guess. This road was mostly just me driving straight without much turns, so it felt like I was driving for a very long time and it was getting kind of boring. I was thinking of just pulling over and taking a small break, maybe eating some snacks I'd taken with me, then later thought about maybe speeding up a little more. But I tried remaining patient for the time being, and I certainly wouldn't want to recommend speeding above the limit too. It could be very dangerous, especially in a place like that and just in general. It wouldn't be right to do. I continued my drive on this road and could slightly see someone just sitting down in the distance to my right. I was getting closer, and once I had gotten closer enough, I pulled over and stared at this person. That probably sounds weird, but I was trying to see what the issue was with that guy. He didn't look to be in distress or anything. His clothes were quite dirty and torn apart in some way though, so he was something. I opened my car door and stood right next to my car, talking to him from there. I asked if he was okay and if he needed help or anything. He slowly stood up and walked right up to me. I questioned him, saying why was he just sitting there in such an isolated area, though I didn't get a response to that question, and he just skipped on to saying that he wanted to get a ride inside my car. It was kind of strange that he avoided that, but he was probably going through a lot maybe. I accepted his request and he let me know the location to where he wanted to go, but then asked for me to open the trunk of my car. I was very hesitant and very confused when he said this. Was he trying to place something in my car or what? I did question him about this, but it was just a really vague response. It felt like he was trying to delay something, but I wasn't sure what he was doing. We continued talking and I was trying to understand his request until I saw him raising his hand as if he was signaling for someone to come to us. This was creeping me out now, and I turned around to see a black SUV coming our way from behind. From my view, it looked like there were only 2 people in that car. They were still quite far away from us, but I could see only the driver and front passenger. Until it got even more closer, I could see more people sticking their heads out the window. The guy I was talking to still raised his hand towards that SUV, and I just asked if he knew those people, though no response whatsoever. I figured he would receive his help by those people, judging by how he was acting with that car coming our way. So I got inside my car and started up the engine. When the guy saw me doing this, he then proceeded to try getting in front of my car and blocking me from driving forward. I was getting irritated, as if I wasn't already stressed out before. I was honking the horn and he still remained in his position. The SUV was really close to us now, and I just slowly drove more onto the side of the road to my right, and then quickly accelerated and did a sharp turn to my left immediately to try going around him before he could go in front again. It was very scary when doing this because my car almost spun out in the process. It wasn't the most ideal way to get out of there, but I didn't want to collide into him, otherwise I'd probably be in much deeper issues than this. I managed to drive away successfully and safely. I could see my rearview mirror that the black SUV was parked on the side of the road, and it looked like the guy was talking to those people. I highly assume he knew those people in there. This has left me with a lot of questions, and I can now tell why it is seen as a dangerous road to drive through. Those guys were probably trying to lure me into a trap to try rob me, I think. I don't know how I didn't realize after all those strange moments, though I'm glad I noticed before that black SUV got to us. I do want to mention one other thing though. It's no surprise that criminals nowadays might carry out advanced ways to try catching out their victims, yet there are so many distractions when outside, like using phones and headphones without awareness of other people. Don't underestimate what some people are capable of doing. I was just driving alone in my car and I was on my way to the grocery store just before it was time for closing. I think many of you guys might relate when you need to purchase something or have forgotten about something right before the stores are closed. That urgent rush to just go to the store feels very stressful before time runs out. I was facing one of those moments and there was only like 30 minutes left before they would close. The journey there would be like 10 to 15 minutes and I was worried they would close early or something. I was just driving down the road and when I took a left turn, it was just congested with so many cars waiting at a red light. Seriously, at this current moment when I was rushing, the heavy traffic would possibly make me even more late and potentially miss the time before closing. I was getting irritated and tried thinking of another route to try avoiding this problem. I saw another road that led to another street and some sort of neighborhood area it would lead onto. It didn't look like any cars were driving down that area at that moment, so I quickly took a right turn and drove onto that road. I never drove around there before, so I pulled out my phone and used Google Maps to see if I could find my way to the grocery store through this neighborhood place. I parked my car on the side of the road when doing this, just waiting for my phone to respond. It was taking a very long time to load and I was getting frustrated because there was probably like 15 minutes remaining until the store would close. So I was using my phone to get the directions and trying to find the best possible route to avoid traffic. I heard someone shouting right nearby to where I was. I tried ignoring it as I didn't want to get distracted in the stressed out situation I was already in. I could hear a lot of people shouting at each other and I didn't realize what area I drove in through. This neighborhood I just parked my car around wasn't the most safest place to be around, you could say. I mean, it looked pretty normal from the outside, but I could see a lot of the homes there had like iron bars placed around the windows, and some homes even for the doors. It was pretty sketchy, but I was more concerned about why there were people screaming, so I tried looking around to see what the issue was, and it looked like there were people from two sides just throwing stuff at each other. They were behind me, so I don't think they would pay attention to me as they were just acting aggressive to each other. My car was still running, and I continued looking at my phone to try to see any other possible directions to take. However, when I was doing this, I heard someone screaming loudly that one of them was carrying a hatchet. As soon as I heard that, I immediately turned my head around and tried seeing what was going on. All those people from before were sprinting their own separate ways, and I could see them running away from someone holding a hatchet that was part of the crowd before. When I saw this, I turned on my front and drove out of there very quickly. My adrenaline was just rushing, and I almost lost control when driving out of that neighborhood. It took a while, but I finally made it back to the street I was on before and on my way back home. What was going on with those people? Like, what could have started all that tension leading up to a man chasing people with a hatchet? I don't know, but I didn't want to be a part of that. I got to my place and parked my car on the driveway, going inside and just lying down on my couch. This was just crazy, and I was breathing so heavily. I forgot all about my shopping journey I had planned on doing, as that obviously wasn't my main concern anymore. At least I was able to get away from there, but what even happened back there? I guess it's best to stay away from sketchy places like that, and I hope no innocent people get involved with this sort of stuff. I don't know about you, but I actually really hated driving around in my car alone. It just doesn't feel the same when no one else is in the car to have conversations with, like a friend or just anyone I enjoy talking with. This one time, I was just driving on my own to take some pictures of nice scenery views or whatever you might call it. The weather would be pretty good for it that day, so I decided I could take my camera with me and just take pictures of the mountains with the nice sun in the background. I would usually post nature type of pictures on Instagram, so this would be great, but it would require me to go drive there for like an hour or so, which was probably one of the downsides I wasn't looking forward to. However, I just had to try getting through that and deal with it. Some things require more effort to achieve, I guess. When I was inside my car, I made sure to place my bag filled with certain supplies in there, just in case if I needed it. Food and drinks and whatever stuff that were useful were placed inside of it. I would be out of the main town area when taking on this journey, so it was important I was prepared in some way. My car wasn't in the best of conditions, to be honest, even though I didn't drive it too often compared to many other people. I didn't really care about maintaining the car too much, if that makes sense. Some people just want to use the car to drive and leave the other stuff aside. And yeah, when thinking about that now, it isn't the most ideal mindset to have when owning a car. This kinda relates to what happens, by the way, because when I was around 20 minutes into my drive, I suddenly felt my car slowly dropping to one side, which was the back left side of my car. Initially, I didn't know what was going on, but then when I stopped my car and looked out from my window to see what was there, the tire at the back was deflated, and this made me very frustrated at that moment. I was in a very isolated location, and I didn't know if I could even call anyone that easily there. I decided I would just stay there and remain in my position. I mean, what else could I do anyway apart from that? I sat there in my seat, and eventually after playing some games on my phone, I fell asleep. When I woke up, it was nighttime and it was almost completely dark out there. I didn't have my headlights on, so I could barely see even inside of my car. It was just the light from my phone that shined through. I grabbed my backpack and ate some food. I was really hungry and this helped me a lot. After eating, I sat there just waiting for what it seemed like nothing, until around 10 minutes later, I could see some car with headlights on in the side mirror, coming from behind. I instantly opened my door and put my hand out. At first, I thought they were just gonna drive past me, but I saw them slowly pull over behind my car. I was feeling a lot more relieved now. I got outside my car to try talking with whoever was there. I was still quite nervous though, because this was a stranger after all, but I decided to go up to their car and try asking for help. I did exactly that, and they understood my situation. They asked if I had a spare tire, but I told them that I don't think I did. I was feeling very stressed out now, because without a spare tire, I didn't know how I would make it back home with my car. He told me to just open my trunk and check if I had a spare tire under the surface inside, so I did that, and surprisingly, I actually had one in there. I wasn't sure if it was already placed there from purchasing the car, or if one of my family members like my dad had placed it in there. I think just by this alone, you can probably assume the lack of knowledge I had with cars. The stranger used a spare tire to change the deflated tire, and he told me to shine the light while he was doing it. So once he was done with that, after taking a while to do so, I tested if the car would drive properly, and it did. I thanked him for helping me and offered to give him some money, but he refused and gave me some advice to make sure I don't get in that situation again, driving away right after. I was very thankful that this stranger had helped me in the situation and drove back home that night. I made sure to be more careful from that day and focus on maintaining my car more frequently. I realized how important it is, and just to be safe on the road in general, it's really necessary to focus on doing. I still will be paranoid in situations like these, even if there might be good strangers that help out though. Someone with malicious intentions in these situations, I don't think anyone wants to face that.